Hey everyone, welcome back to Group Therapy. I'm one of your hosts, licensed psychologist, Dr. Jessica Rabon.
And I'm licensed clinical social worker, Kristen Gingrich.
And I'm Meredith Steele, and I have 6 cats. And no clinical degree.
So today we are talking all about parasocial relationships. So settle in, take a seat, and welcome to Group Therapy. So as you just heard in our intro, K10 and Justin are out today, and we have a different co-host joining us who has 6 cats. So KBI, do you want to introduce your fellow Mainer?
I would love to. You may know her from her loud and obnoxious and chaotic videos that she makes in her car as Babies of Steel, but I also know her as a loud, chaotic, and simply amazing fellow creator, and I am so happy to be able to call her a friend and the main attraction, pun intended, Meredith Steele.
Thanks for having me. That was so sweet. That was really nice.
Welcome to Group Therapy, because we both know that you need it.
Yeah, I do.
So,
more than just this.
So welcome. But before we get started, because we're doing this episode a little different, because normally we bring our guests in at the end to answer the questions, but you're going to be here for the entire discussion. But I want to ask you a couple questions before we get started. One, why'd you get started on social media?
Well, I feel like for most people on TikTok, at least, it was just that I was stuck home during the pandemic and I was not doing well. And I'm a verbal processor. And when I couldn't verbally process things with my friends in a social setting, my therapist was like, maybe we try talking to people on the internet, like just for a little bit to pass the time. And so I would just make videos to, I don't know, go to my car and get away from my kids for a little bit and lock the door of the car and just sort of decompress. And then I had a video go viral pretty early on in the pandemic. And then people were like, we want more of this. And then I just kept making videos. And now I have 1 million followers and it's a whole different world. So it what started as a really mindless, fun way to verbally process how stressed I was during the pandemic has turned into a secondary career for me. So.
And I love that your therapist suggested that you join TikTok.
Well, okay, that was like an exaggeration, but she was like, my therapist, I love, by the way, and I accidentally put her name on my Instagram stories one time, and it was only up for like 20 minutes, and then I had to confess to her. I was like, I'm so sorry, because I put up like a mental health matters post, and I was like, go to therapy, and then I forgot to blur her name out. And she was like, yeah, don't worry. My friends sent it to me because they all follow you. And I was like, cool. I'm so sorry that I outed you. But she basically was like, you're a little stressed and you need to do something or else you're going to become a non-functioning agoraphobe who is so anxious she can't exist. So,
I mean,
here we are.
My therapist follows Meredith. It's been a topic of our therapy session. It was great. But I also love, like, as much as your content is chaotic and all of that, it's also, you make very meaningful content as well. Like, you normalize motherhood, you normalize bodies, you just normalize talking about mental health. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I love you so much, because you also, while you might be screaming in your car about birds, you're also making really meaningful content over here as well. I mean, not that birds aren't meaningful.
They're not.
You hate birds.
I feel like
she loves birds.
No, I literally just put up a video 45 minutes ago. I got bit by a seagull yesterday at the beach. Like, bit. Not just like a little nibble either. He had they bit my whole finger. Didn't get my sandwich, but then I was afraid to eat the whole sandwich because I didn't know how much it had touched. And I don't know what they have. But this wasn't the point of the story, was that I started making the videos, and the initial videos that went viral were like big and loud and obnoxious, and people really liked that. But as Kristen knows me in real life, and she can attest to the fact that I'm not actually like that in the majority of my life, just when I'm really excited. And so I slowly realized, like, I could actually make meaningful content and like share other parts of my personality, and not everyone's going to mass unfollow me. So it worked out really well.
It did. And then we have our last question that we ask all of our guests, and there is only one right answer.
Oh no!
In this, with us two on, there's only one right.
With us two, there's only one right answer: muffins or donuts.
Oh, muffins.
Yes.
This is an ongoing fight. We are muffin girlies.
Yeah.
And the other two are donut people.
K10
They're donut people. And I'm like, no.
I mean, donuts are fine, but muffins are food. Like donuts are just like a blood sugar situation that holds you over. But like, I would not be like, wow, I'm really hungry. I'd like to eat a donut. Like you just have a donut and then you're still hungry. So if I had to pick one, it would be a muffin. I just got muffins today.
Yes. We win this round, Jess. We win this round.
I know. Finally. I'm pretty sure Meredith is our first guest that did say muffins.
Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Kristen and I are like sponsored by Dunkin', and we're like, I guess they serve muffins too, so we're okay.
They do.
I digress.
So anyway,
what about the reflection question?
I was about to say, so we're really excited to talk to Meredith about parasocial relationships today. But before we do that, let's look at our reflection question from last week. So we asked you, what is one way that you can help yourself if you have social anxiety? So we got some answers both on Instagram and Threads. So some of the answers were surround myself with extroverts. So everybody just needs a Justin in their life. Allow yourself to step away from situations and take breaks if you need to. Wear earplugs or a fidget ring in public. Everybody has their fidget ring. Deep breathing techniques. And then the last one came from the Kristen that is not here. And she said, have an emotional support donut.
Muffin.
She's just incorrect. She's just
emotional
incorrect.
For muffin?
Yeah, I mean, that might be better.
That's probably what she meant.
She's not here to defend herself, so it's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was
typo.
so much that you guys needed to like.
We got into a fight about chicken wings last week too.
Should we get
about
we'll stay on topic. We'll stay on topic. Yeah. We could do this. I want to know the whole year.
We can talk after we stop recording. But yeah, so we're talking about parasocial relationships. So first, I just want to open with a question like, what is a parasocial relationship?
Kristen, you're answering that, right? You're the professional here.
But you sum it up really good. No, but I think I've heard you describe it. So I want you to do it because I've heard you describe it.
Well, my description is more like my personal experience with it as opposed to like a clinical
explanation. Well, let's start with that.
Yeah, let's start with that.
I have learned that people consume me in their home and like they're in their bed, they're on their couch, they're in their car, and they're consuming me so regularly in their home comfort spaces that they like sort of the veil is lifted and they don't understand that I don't know them the way that they know me. Mm-hmm. And the majority of the time I feel like it's pretty harmless, but there have been certain scenarios where it's been a little uncomfortable. And so navigating that from the creator standpoint has been really interesting. But I bet there's a better explanation. Or did I do a good job? Did I get a degree?
I love that. I love that explanation. Like you add a humanness to it. Because, I mean, KBI, do you want to answer your thoughts or do you just want me? Like, because I have the textbook definition.
Yeah, read the textbook definition,
usual.
Jess. As you always. Jess will be searching research articles in the background during this podcast to pull up facts. It's great.
So a parasocial relationship is a one-sided relationship where the other person is completely unaware of the other's existence. So like you beautifully said, Meredith, like people are consuming you like in their beds, in their homes, know all these things about you. And you're like, who the heck are you? You don't even know them. Yeah.
Which I've never really truly thought about that super in-depthly until now. That like, I mean, I consume people while I'm like laying in bed or I'm sitting in the bathtub.
Going to the bathroom.
But like now that like I'm thinking about it, it feels so creepy. Like even for me to think about it, like I'm just scrolling and I'm watching Meredith while I'm peeing.
I'm pretty sure we've peed like in a hotel room together. Like we're in that.
We're past. We've gotten out of the parasocial over here.
That helps me understand because sometimes, well, I'm sure there are questions related to this, but sometimes people will approach me and I'll be like, you have no idea that I don't know who you are. And like, it's weird, but I'll let you, I won't jump ahead.
No, but that was a great point. Like, you know, people coming up to you. And I think it's interesting, you know, Meredith, like you shared, you started TikTok just to kind of have an outlet, and now you have 1 million followers. So there's 1 million people consuming your content, know who you are. And like, there's this whole world of influencers now. And they're always like, since social media, I feel like there's been influencers, but since the pandemic, I feel like now there's this whole new group of people that people have parasocial relationships with, if that makes sense. It's not just like movie stars or musicians. It's not that they're not real people. I was going to say like, it's real people, but like, I don't know, people that
tangible, like you can, you feel like one of the most common comments people will leave on my page will be like, I feel like we would be best friends if I live near you, or like, I feel like I know you, or I would love, like, you know what I mean? Like, and when I started making videos, I was having a hard time, and I would make a video and someone else would be like, I am also having a hard time. And it was so validating for me to be like, okay, I'm not the only person experiencing this feeling. But the more I've done it, the more I realize like there's a very interesting balance of trying to navigate how I share things in a way that is helpful, but also like sort of protects me. Because I've told stories thinking, oh, this is a thing that works for me, or this is a thing I've gone through. And then I realized that sometimes like you say stuff online on the internet, like especially mental health pages or motherhood pages or like womanhood, that's really intimate. And then I forget that I'm also sharing that with a stranger. And then that level of intimacy, even though it's through a screen, makes them feel like it's a two-way relationship. And then when I see them in real life, or I've had experiences with people in real life where I have been like, holy shit, maybe I need to be a little more careful about how I share online, because it doesn't necessarily immediately impact me, right? When I make these videos, but then I see someone in real life or get messages from someone, and I'm like, oh shit, like I have to be careful about how and you guys, I mean, you guys are always like, this is not a replacement for mental health.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even imagine what your DMs look like when.
But like, and I like what you said, because it ties into the episode that we did 2 episodes ago with Shani, where we talked about vulnerability and social media and how it's such a fine line to walk. And I know, Meredith, me and you have had this conversation too about like, why are you sharing certain details? And again, are you sharing to push forward a narrative or to push forward your page? Are you sharing because you're actually engaged in this content? And I think it's also important to note that, I mean, a lot of parasocial relationships happen with celebrities, influencers, those type of things, but they can happen with fictional characters like books or TV shows.
Really?
Yeah. Like Miss Olivia Benson, man.
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
like,
you're right.
It can happen, especially like in book series and things like that. A lot of like these fandoms, and it can get to the point where it turns into kind of this parasocial relationship. Again, that can become unhealthy. I think that sometimes there's nothing we can control. Sometimes we just have that. And we feel like we're closer to someone than we actually are. But it's also like, is there something in your brain that's saying, hey, I'm not really friends? Like, I've already said this. I have a parasocial relationship with Taylor Swift. I know for a fact that woman does not know I exist. But because I know all of these details about her life in a way, it makes me think that I am her friend. I know that I'm not. But Taylor, if you're listening, I would 100% be bestie.
Can you imagine if Taylor Swift listened to our podcast?
I would die.
We would have to have our own session on decompressing from our own psychotic parasocial relationship with her. Be like, hey, remember that time we were all self-righteous being like, this is my parasocial relationship experience, and then Taylor Swift, and we're like, we were best friends. She loves me.
That would be me. I would simply but like going to the Eras tour, like everyone was like, I was screaming at her like I knew who she was. And I don't know her. Like,
listen, I saw Taylor Swift when I was in college, and like I firmly believe in my heart of hearts that I am a more legitimate fan than like anyone else. And I'm like, what on earth are you talking about, Meredith? This is not, you're not connected to reality at this point, but
yeah.
So I know I wasn't here for the vulnerability episode and Meredith wasn't either. But one thing I was thinking about with the parasocial relationships is, you know, how much people share online and like how much people in the parasocial relationship actually perceive they know versus what information is actually out there, if that makes sense. So like I was reflecting on this with the information I share, like on my social media pages. And I honestly don't feel like I actually share a lot about me outside of like my role as a psychologist. Like, and I know KBI, like you posted a video of your husband the other day because people were like, since when have you had a husband? And like, I'll, you know, make reference to my husband, but like yours, he's not on social media. I make reference to my daughter, but I don't share her name. There's no videos of her, things like that. And I'm like, outside of like mental health stuff, do I actually share that much about me? And then what do people assume they know based on like the content they're consuming?
Well, and that's the weirdest part, I think, for me. Also, that people on social media, the perception of you is whatever their introduction to you was, right? So they'll be like, you know, they found me because of a such and such video. And then a month later, I'll make a video about my husband or my kids or my animals. And they'll be like, I didn't know this about you. And sometimes they get mad. And I'm like, I'm sorry that I didn't put all this information in one video. And then I feel like, especially with the internet too, then you're repeating yourself and then you're like, am I like, Kristen, you do a great job at circling back and covering things so that everyone is on the same playing field. And I do not. Obviously, my content's all over the place. But I don't show my kids. Well, my husband until very recently was not in my content at all. And people will still be like, I didn't know you had a family. I didn't know you had a job. I didn't know you lived in Maine. And it's like my profile is Maine and it's like 4 emojis and a bunch of cats. I'm like, it's not that it's not there. It's just people have an idea of who you are. And then also, and this is probably another thing that you guys have experienced, is they decide that they know a version of you and they hold you to a standard. And then they get upset with you when you deviate from whatever perception they have of you. And I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten an email, like paragraphs of someone telling me that they're disappointed in me. And I'm like, 1, I don't accept that. But 2, like, how can you be disappointed in me? You don't know me. And I've become so protective of certain parts of my life because of that, because no matter how hard you try to curate how someone's going to perceive what you're putting out there, someone is always really committed to misinterpreting it. And I'm so cautious about how that would hurt other people, because I know it hurts me when it's misinterpreted. And I am so protective of other people in my life because they didn't ask for that exposure. Is this still parasocial relationships? Am I getting way off topic?
No, you are.
Well, I was going to loop to our first meeting, Meredith, when we got lunch together. And I remember sitting there and I distinctly remember saying, you're so much quieter in person. Because she wasn't screaming at me across the table at the little restaurant we went to. Like, and so like my brain was like, like I've met content creators where they do certain content and then I meet them, like they do these skits and they come and talk to me and they don't have that accent. And like in my head, I'm struggling because I've seen this person in a version of themselves, but this is not the version of who they are.
Yeah.
And those are 2 very distinctive pieces. Like I get all the time, I would love for you to be my therapist. And I'm like, I bet you $20 you would quit on me in 2 weeks because you would hate me. Because again, what you see on social media is not quite what you would see in a therapy office. And people get really confused in that and what that looks like.
Yeah.
I always like to think that whatever version of people of me that people get in real life, they're pleasantly surprised by, because I also know that like the loud, intense version of me on the internet, it can be very polarizing. And some people will be like, I actually never want to hear you speak again. And I'm like, okay, wait, like, hold on. There are other parts of me that don't suck. But not that the loud parts of me suck, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
And also navigating, like, I don't owe them that though. Which is
Absolutely.
weird.
But even how hard that is, like when individuals, kind of like you said, like they create this version of you in your head and then you don't live up to whatever that standard is. Like, unless you have done solid self-work, like, and things like that, that can be really damaging too.
Yeah.
I literally got a message from a girl today, grown woman, who had commented on my video being angry. And I couldn't tell if she was angry or not. Also, because like it's text and you can never tell how someone really intends for it to land. But she was like, you don't respond to DMs or comments ever. Like, why? And I immediately was like, oh, you're right. Like, I should be doing more. I owe this platform to you. I owe some engagement to you. And then I was like, I'm sorry. I'm literally making content for free on the internet for whoever they want to consume. Like, I don't also owe you access to all other parts of me, but I felt guilty. My first response was like shame that like I had somehow let this person down. And then I had to be like, nope.
Yeah.
And again, like I think we see this with celebrities when they play certain characters, right? When Robert Downey, I shouldn't use Robert Downey Jr. because he in his core is probably Iron Man, but when Robert Downey Jr. doesn't show up as Iron Man, or why is the only celebrity I can think of Robert Downey Jr. right now?
The only celebrity ever.
But like Daniel Radcliffe doesn't show up as Harry Potter.
Yeah. Or when like all the stuff recently with celebrities being sued and having lawsuits, and they have this image built by a team. And then things come out, and whether or not they're true or not, we won't get into, but like things come out that confront your perception of them. It can be so weird. Cause then I find myself being like, wow, I'm really disappointed in them. And I'm like, like, that's not normal, because I wouldn't want that as if I were Lizzo.
Well, and Meredith, going back to something you said when you were talking about like the DMs, I think messages like that kind of speak to the one-sidedness. Like people, when they're in a parasocial relationship, they truly think it's a friendship. I mean, we haven't even touched on like romantic parasocial relationships. And so in a friendship, there's that back and forth interaction. So there's like this expectation. And I think I could be wrong, but for content creators specifically, I feel like there's this sense of, well, they're like a quote unquote real person too. So they'll respond versus like us reaching out to Taylor Swift in her DMs. Like it would be great if she responded, but we probably have like an expectation that she's not going to see what we message her. But yeah, that speaks to that kind of the one-sidedness, but the perception that it is this mutual relationship. So I guess a question I have is like, how do you all feel like parasocial relationships impact mental health? Like both for for the person in them, like the consumer of the relationship and the target of the relationship. I hope that distinction made sense. I don't know what the right terms are.
I mean, I personally think, it's for the benefit for the person who is the giving of the parasocial relationship in a way and is believing that they have the relationship. I think there is a piece of that feels like connection, right? There is a positive. They feel that connection, and whatever that connection might be, right? Whether it's a motherhood account and you're connecting to them because you feel less alone, or again, the mental health because, wow, I'm learning so much from this person. I think it's just that level of intensity. And can you actually think, I don't actually have a relationship with this person, and be able to sit in that seat as well and say, I don't truly actually know this person.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy their content. And maybe in another world, I would totally be friends with what I see.
Yeah.
But, it can lead so very quickly down a dangerous road of again, becoming harmful. It can become obsessive. It can become stalkerish. It can become harmful in just like if you do have an interaction with the person you have a parasocial relationship with. And it can be harmful because, like Meredith said, like someone can come up to you and you could be like, I have no idea who you are. And if you are really sitting in that seat of like, this person knows me because they responded to my comment 4 times and they say, I'm Susie 747. And you're like, that could be really harmful, not intended to be harmful.
Yep.
Because it's never that, but like that can be devastating for some people.
And it's also like really, it makes me super anxious when I try to navigate those things when they happen in real life, because I try to be hypersensitive to the fact that like they're really excited. The majority of the interactions come from a place of like excitement and love. And I try to remember that when I want to be really sometimes overwhelmed by it. And I think most of the time when I catch people being like, oh, and then they'll be like, oh, wait, I'm sorry. I realize that you don't know who I am. But there are occasionally scenarios where you're like, okay, like we're going to go. And then I'm afraid, right, 2 days later, there's going to be a subreddit about me being a horrible person, or, you know, some video somebody puts up like, I met Babies of Steel in real life and she's a monster. And then I get so stressed.
She's a mean girl.
That's a whole nother story for off camera.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, and I think of like, to KB, everything you said, I was thinking, and I also think of people that like kind of prioritize these parasocial relationships over their like real life friendships, and that being a sign of it being like harmful. Like, are you investing, Meredith? I'm going to use you as an example. Like, are people investing all of their time in consuming your content, like watching your videos, messaging you, you know, leaving comments, all these things, and prioritizing that relationship with you over friends that, you know, live in the same town and things like that? Because I mean, and that can kind of go into obsession, but even if you don't, like, if the intent is not obsession, I don't think that's anybody's intent necessarily, but like, I can see that being extremely harmful, like losing your real life relationships for parasocial ones.
And when you say that too, so this sparks something in my head, and also Meredith talking about Reddit, is parasocial relationships don't always have to be positive. Parasocial relationships can be negative. So there are these things on like Reddit called snark pages, where it is full of individuals who hate certain creators. And they go in and they are screenshotting people's content and connecting it to a story that they have screenshotted on their phone from 8 months ago. And so I also want to like kind of bring up that parasocial relationships don't always have to be this positive, like we're besties. It can also be this harmful, I'm targeting you, intending to cause harm.
Absolutely.
And also like particularly snark pages, which I'm grateful I somehow have stayed off the majority of them, but I definitely get upset when I show up on one every now and then. And to that same count, sometimes someone will put up a video or a stitch of me or a duet that is not kind. And people will, in an attempt to, because they feel protective of me, because I've been outspoken about how hard I sometimes struggle with how people treat me online, they will tag me in it and they'll be like, but I love Babies of Steel, or, oh no, like don't talk about Babies of Steel like this, blah, blah, blah. Or they'll send it to me and be like, have you seen this? And I have to, like, I want to say to them, like, I understand you feel protective of me and that's really nice, but like, maybe we don't send this to me. Like maybe I don't need a screenshot of a whole comment section talking about how much they hate me, like that I otherwise would not have seen. And they, most of the time, again, they believe that they're doing the right thing and that they're being protective of me. But there are also, like you said, Kristen, people who are like really invested in you, like full blown haters that will make extra pages to devote to harassing you. I had a woman who, I think she made 30 fake profiles of mine. And she was harassing all of my followers. And I don't know, I still to this day don't know who she is. But I think it was probably someone who liked me and I either did something that upset them or they wrote something and I blocked them. And it turned from that into this whole other sort of like revenge because they felt entitled to my page, which is so weird to think that like this little light up rectangle is now causing this.
Yeah.
But that's crazy. Sorry. That was a tangent.
I think this discussion so far has been really good in just kind of highlighting like what a parasocial relationship is, because I don't think a lot of people actually, from like the questions that we got and like messages, like a lot of people didn't know that this was like a thing or had like a name to it. And I think that once people listen to this episode, and one thing we want to be clear about is like having a parasocial relationship isn't inherently bad.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's acknowledging again where that level actually is and how it's impacting you as the person. Because I think we all have parasocial relationships in some capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think a part of parasocial relationships that I personally find very fascinating is with particularly like in the influencer space, when people curate a vulnerability and an honesty that maybe is or is not genuine. But I think a lot of people forget that social media is a business. And so people will trust an influencer or trust a content creator when they say and do things. And I think it's important sometimes to take a step back and say like, you know, is this a reliable source? Like sometimes I'll see posts from someone who I'm mutuals with, right? Who I am in a parasocial relationship with. Like I've never met them. They've never met me, but we've seen each other's videos. We've DM'd and they'll post something and I'll be like, I trust her and I'm going to go buy this thing that she is earning a commission on. And this is Kristen. This is not related to that.
I was like, she is directing this to me right now.
No, this is not about you. Meredith
bought something I influenced her to get and she has officially she hates it.
This is not related to that because you actually love the product. But I think people like it sort of has muddied the water, especially in the last couple of years where a lot of the bigger content creators in short form video format started out as a hobby, right? It was something fun to do. And in the last couple of years, it has progressed into like a financial thing that is great. Like that's great. It's been really beneficial to my family too. But I'll have to stop myself and be like, okay, this person is making money off of this such and such thing. I don't know them. And I don't know that I can trust them. And then it's weird. And then I'll buy something and then I'll be like, I now hate this person because they suggested an Amazon dress and it's a piece of shit. But that's all built out of a parasocial relationship that is now financially benefiting someone, which is such a wild concept. And a lot of people use that in a predatory way, which I see and I feel really yucky when I watch it. So I try to be really careful about anything that I would make money on or stuff, branded stuff. But that's a whole nother thing. Like, you know, you see Matthew McConaughey driving a Lincoln and you're like, oh, you know, blah, 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 blah. But you see that and there's more of a understanding that he's being paid. And then people on social media, they'll be like, or medical advice. You guys probably deal with it. People giving mental health advice on the internet that is unhinged and so illegal, like things that are so insane. And you're like, and they have people who hold them to this higher standard and it's like legitimately dangerous. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Like the girl the other
I can talk about parasocial relationships for
like the girl the other day was like, you could go onto Fiverr and get paid to be an empathetic listener. And I'm like, no.
Right. Or like it was on the news the other day that a girl died. Like a woman died because she was a fruit only influencer and she ate nothing but fruit for like a very long time and she died. And she had a platform of people who were following along with it. And it's like, it doesn't have to be this like fatal attraction, boil your bunny situation. It can be that someone has curated an energy that feels safe and comfortable and you start to trust them in a way that is really, really dangerous.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Know what else we trust?
You know what?
Were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, you know what I was gonna say? You know what's not dangerous?
Oh,
but yours
the Google
is better.
Scholar Shorts.
The Google
when I dive into research. But Meredith, you actually set me up real well for my research article that I'm going to talk about. So the question I'm going to pose to you all, do you think there are differences in parasocial relationships between mainstream celebrities and micro celebrities, which are defined as like influencers? Mm-hmm. So KBI is like nodding her head vigorously. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this study came out, it's a 2021 study. And part of the reason I chose this one is because the more I know, it's 2 years old.
Jesus, that is an ancient study, Jess.
Wasn't yours like from 2014?
We're not talking about me.
It was written on papyrus with
but it was actually interesting, Meredith, because a lot of the more recent studies were talking about exactly what you just brought up, like influencers and parasocial relationships and like buying products and stuff. And I'll be honest, like my brain was just not fully comprehending because it was like economic. So, but this one is just on the differences between, you know, mainstream celebrities and what they define as micro celebrities. So a few key takeaways. So participants reported receiving a lower degree of reciprocity from mainstream celebrities than from micro celebrities. So we kind of already touched on that. Like we don't expect Taylor Swift to, you know, respond to us, but maybe your favorite influencer. Participants viewed mainstream celebrities as more authentic than micro celebrities, and a higher degree of intimate relationships was perceived with mainstream celebrities, which was interesting. Oh. There was no significant differences between the degree of parasocial relationships between micro celebrities and mainstream celebrities, meaning that people had like parasocial relationships with both at the same degree. And then for both mainstream and micro celebrities, perceived reciprocity and perceived intimacy predicted parasocial relationships, but perceived authenticity did not actually predict parasocial relationships. So basically we don't have to be authentic. No, I'm just kidding. But like, yeah, so how authentic someone is does not predict if it's a parasocial relationship. It's the back and forth interaction and how intimate they feel.
That does make sense though.
I mean, it kind of does because like, I definitely have, I wouldn't say necessarily to the extent of parasocial relationship, but like follow accounts that you know are like, the person is putting on
full of shit. I could like, sorry, I interrupted you, but I have had the misfortune of meeting some people from the internet that present themselves in such a magnificent way that you would never be prepared. And like, I like to believe I'm sort of well versed in internet personalities because I sort of exist as one. And I've learned, there are parts of my personality that I have shared with the internet that I've learned are not safe to share with the internet. I can't trust the internet with, so I pull those things back. But I think at my core, I am who I am. And I have met some people who are quite adept at portraying a very different version of themselves. And by consuming their content, you would never know it. And it it can be really weird as like, because I feel like, I know who's behind the curtain and that's really yucky. And then you're watching people praise them and trust them. And, but as you're saying that, I'm like, well, if authenticity doesn't matter and it loops back into financial stuff, I'm like, well, why not? Right.
Yeah.
I was an employee and you do a 2-4 check. Me. I wouldn't do it for a check, but a lot of people would.
Yeah. Or even people that like clearly have an internet persona and say that they have an internet persona. People still are invested in them. People that, and then it's like they make a, video not in character and people are like, what, like, what is this? But you can definitely, so it was just interesting. But I think that intimacy makes sense. Like if you feel like you can like know things about them, vulnerability, then you're going to develop a parasocial relationship.
I wonder if the celebrity element is because you like admire them, right? Like I don't need to see, I don't necessarily want to know that Jennifer Garner has a dirty kitchen. Like I just want her to be, you know what I mean? Like in my perception, when I was thinking about a celebrity who you like see, I don't know, she's in like a like a credit card commercial or something.
Yeah.
And she's always very polished and sweet and whatnot. And I don't think I would want to know what her closet looks like, because I feel like and again, she has a PR team who's doing a great job at curating a very lovely image. But I think maybe the celebrity element comes from the fact that you just sort of adore these people. And which is probably why it's so hard when you find out that so-and-so like is a murderer, because you're just idolize them. Not Jennifer Garner's not a murderer.
Just went to the most extreme.
Trying to think of like a really bad thing.
I hate when my favorite celebrities are murderers. I mean, you're right.
But
popular opinion.
I mean, but that's the thing is like, you know, for a fact that if Jennifer Gardner was up on trial for murder, PR team, don't come at me. This is a truly hypothetical. There are going to be people who be like, she didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, think about the political system.
I'm literally going to be like
people who will be presented with firm evidence and who are still like, no.
Yeah.
I do not accept. Like, Trisha Paytas is the greatest example of all this. Like an uncancelable human that people love regardless of how she behaves.
Yeah.
Do you guys?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a train wreck, but I'm in a parasocial relationship with her.
But even then, like, I mean, I know for her specifically, she has said at times, like, she does some of the things she does because it goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, we go back to knowing the system and what works to make that go. And again, and like the impacts that has.
Yeah.
Know what else works? Well, the other option was know what else goes. So
yeah,
the polls. It didn't work. The polls. So,
what do you got for us this week?
Yes. So as always, the polls. Like
the polls. Sorry. I was like, this is a high level psychology term that I'm not familiar with. Suppose.
This is for the educated bitches in the room, Meredith.
Can you see my voice yet? Can you see that?
Yes.
We can see
you. Bird for you. Bird lover. All right.
Yeah, so every week we post polls. So the first question I asked this week, I guess it's not really a question, it's a statement. A parasocial relationship is defined as a one-sided relationship where the other person blank. So the options I gave is completely unaware of the other's existence, used to be their friend but now ignores them, is a movie star, or only responds to the other person sometimes. So we know what the correct answer is because we already talked about it. So it is completely unaware of the other's existence. What do you think our group members voted?
I bet it was that one.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see the other answers.
Yeah. I feel like maybe movie star came in close second.
So, okay, you all are correct. That our group members got it correct at 66%. Next was only responds to the other person sometimes at 25%, followed by used to be their friend but now ignores them at 5%, and a movie star was only at 4%.
Interesting.
Weird.
Yeah. No, I thought that too, Meredith.
Right.
I thought
interesting.
You can say weird. Okay. So then the next I had was research from ThriveWorks shows that blank % of Americans have likely been in a parasocial relationship. So the random numbers I chose were 37, 42, 51, 63.
63.
I think this research is skewed because it should say 100%, but 63.
Yeah. So it's actually 51%. But I know. So our group members primarily said 42%, followed by 37, followed by 61, followed by 51. Fun fact. So in the study that I pulled this number from, it also said, but only 16% of Americans will admit that they're in a parasocial relationship.
I was just going to say, I wonder how many of them are either not aware or would be like, no, I don't have an unhealthy relationship with a stranger. Like that requires a level of self-awareness that
they should just have done this study at a Taylor Swift or Jonas Brothers concert and it would have been 100%.
Yeah, no, I know. I was surprised it was actually that low. Okay. So the next question I asked, have you been in a parasocial relationship? The options were yes, no, or unsure.
I would say
I wonder
yes.
if unsure. I wonder how high unsure was, because a lot of people didn't know.
So unsure was the highest at 55%, followed by yes at 30%, and then no at 15%.
It's above 16%.
I was like, what? Yeah.
15%, what, 20% said no. So that's like
15%.
I'm sure
yeah.
it's like there's a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then what percent of Americans have experienced a genuine bereavement after the death of a celebrity?
Ooh.
So the options were 10, 15, 20, 25.
25.
The whole world
So it's only
cried when
20.
Betty White died.
It was
Robin
20,
Williams, but I'm still upset.
So Robin Williams was the person that I used the picture of on the polls.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, I definitely did my homework and followed up on all of these questions that you listed before this.
So the answer is 20%, but our group members, 34% said 25 and 34% said 20.
Interesting.
Followed by 15, followed by 10. I was surprised that was that low, too.
Yeah.
And
I don't
then
know.
the
I
last,
live in constant fear. I'm sorry.
no,
I'm
go.
talking. I am always like bracing myself for when Britney Spears dies. Like I feel like she's like the Anna Nicole Smith of our current generation.
Oh, yeah.
And every time she posts, I get so nervous for her. And I feel like,
do you have her on alert?
How strongly people care about her. And like, she's a great example of a millennial parasocial relationship where people are protesting outside of a courthouse for someone that they don't know.
Yeah. And you don't know the details of any of the stuff that have happened.
Oh, and like she's also a perfect example of just like theories going around of like,
oh yeah,
like her life and things like that.
And spoken out repeatedly, being like, these are not true, and I don't like them, and people are like, we don't care, including myself.
Yeah. Did you say including myself?
She just outs herself.
So the last question I asked is, how do you think parasocial relationships impact mental health? And I then specified like for the person in them, not the target of them. Mostly positively, mostly negatively, or unsure / it depends.
Unsure depends. That would be my. But maybe they think it's positive.
So unsure it depends was at 52, followed by mostly negative at 42. And mostly positive was only 6%. I will say, I realized after the fact, I may have unintentionally primed because I took this lovely screenshot from Janelle's video of Janelle, Kristen, and Justin together. And then I realized the text on the top says, you need some therapists. So sorry, group members, if I accidentally primed you to think it was
to say no.
Negative because the screenshot said you need some therapists.
I just love the deep digging you went for some of those photos.
Well, because I started because I was like, okay, parasocial relationships. And Meredith, I'll have to show you after. So Meredith, I was creepy and I found a random picture of you. So the first picture was like me holding. Because I was trying to highlight
she could have just texted me and I could have given her embarrassing photos.
No, I
took footage of me publicly cleaning my armpits and reapplying deodorant because we went to a Red Sox event and I was so sweaty. I was like, I can't go. I can't go in public to meet people. And instead, what if
I run into someone and they make a Reddit post?
Yeah, and I'm like, what if someone goes, I love you, and then I hug them, and they make a whole video series about how I have slippery armpits or something. I was so distressed, and this jerk is recording it for some blackmail file. For the subreddit.
Well, I took one off of your public social media.
Okay.
So it looked very, very nice. But so I was trying to get pictures of all of us to do for the background. And I was like, I need one. But there's no pictures of just the two Kristens and Justin from when you all were in Florida. So I had to take a screen grab from Janelle's video.
If you would have texted me, I could have sent you one.
But then it wouldn't have been as funny.
AI. One of my favorite things is make my own group photos of people when I don't have them.
I love that.
Talk about parasocial relationships. She's going to post ones with Taylor Swift, like me and my bestie.
No. People I really know. But if I need a group photo of all of us, instead of finding one, I'll just make one.
It's an AI.
I'm
That's
really
a
good
idea.
at Photoshop.
It's a good idea.
No, not once you see this.
Oh, God.
I don't know if you can see this.
Stop it.
That was, that's kind of bad.
That's the worst. It's not even good.
Why
What did it do to
head so
Ashley's
big compared
face?
to the rest?
Poor Ashley.
We were looking for a photo, so then there's also this one. This is another
She's
really
just trying
good
to
one.
exist as Tinky Winky.
You're welcome.
What the heck is happening?
If you want, though, some new screens for your podcast, you can hire me.
I will hire you for when this episode comes out.
Did Kristen warn you we would get off topic?
Yeah.
Here's a Photoshop video of me and my friends as Teletubbies. Haha.
But you know what we don't need AI for? Coming up with the group member questions.
Yes.
Boom.
Meredith,
Was there another one? Was there another poll?
No.
So we got some really good ones this week. Some pretty thought-provoking ones. But first,
we always get good ones.
We do. But we're going to start with Max from Iowa. And he asks, when do you think a parasocial relationship crosses the line into an unhealthy obsession?
That's you guys. You answer that.
So, okay.
You're more qualified.
No, I was going to say, I think my first thought was kind of what I already alluded to. If you start prioritizing like this relationship over real life. And then I also kind of think of like, the image that came to mind was the music video for Stan by Eminem. Like, do you remember? I'm aging myself, but that's the guy, like,
that's a literal noun now. Stan is a noun because of that.
But like, you know, writing those letters, never hearing back, and like investing so much time, like maybe sending presents, showing up to people's house, sending presents, not like, oh, this is my PO box or whatever, like finding addresses or things like that. I don't know. Those are just some of the thoughts that came to mind. What were you going to say?
I agree. I think it has to do with like how much time and energy, and just being like completely untherapeutic. Like, how much do you enter stalkery?
Mm-hmm.
Like being like if you're entering that, and I know it's sometimes like a lot of times stalkers don't think that they're stalkers. And so the problem is there's the level of awareness of how toxic it can be, even for yourself or the other person. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I feel like if you're in a place where you're asking that question, I would trust that you might be checking in with another person, or like even to ask it is a good sign.
Yeah.
That you're probably not entering into stalker territory if you're like, is this bad? Like you seem to have some sort of a conscience in this scenario. But again, I'm the cat lady, not the licensed clinical social worker, psychologist.
Both.
Oh, cool. Perfect.
Both.
Yeah, I did it.
You got them both. Anonymous says, are there similarities between parasocial relationships and just genuine friendships?
I will speak to this because I do group travel with women who are followers of mine. And so I have had 2 separate trips where I have entered into like a week-long vacation with people that I don't know. And I have a really hard time opening up to people face to face. It's not my greatest skill. And I do seem like open and vulnerable online, but there's a lot I don't talk about online because, again, I can't trust the internet with it. And I have found that my own vulnerability has given other people space, like held space for other people to be vulnerable, and has allowed me to have really great and powerful conversations with people who I, 1, never would have interacted with, and 2, probably would not have been able to get a friendship to a give and take space, aside from like a really aggressive, like trauma dumping situation, which is not what happens, right? Like I feel lucky that the people I've had these travels with are in a healed enough place that the conversations are good. But I do feel like I'm really grateful for that because it has helped me have really great friendships with people who I never would have known.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely.
Anyone else? I forget the question.
I mean, I think like the vulnerability aspect, and I know we kind of touched on this, like feeling less alone, because we see that in friendships. And I know with parasocial relationships, like, I mean, I'm sure this has happened to all of us. Like, oh my gosh, like just a comment, like, I can relate so much. Thank you for talking about this. Like, I don't feel alone. And I feel like that's something we often get in friendships, like that we have space or even like common interests. Like, you know, Meredith, I know you said earlier, you have people comment on the time like, oh my gosh, we could be best friends. Or, well, probably for both of you, but like KBI, like people commenting like about Duncan, and I love Duncan too. And so I feel like those things parallel like the types of friendships you would have, because usually you have friendships with people that have similar interests and you feel safe to be vulnerable with. Obviously, the difference is it's coming from one side.
Let's see. Caitlin from California, she uses a big word in our question that I had to look up what it meant. What might cause a parasocial relationship to turn into heteromania? Do you think this delusion is increased with social media? What are your thoughts? And heteromania, after Googling it, is this idea that this other person is in love with you.
Mm-hmm. Have you all seen the Catfish episode of the guy that thought he was in a relationship with Katy Perry?
No, but I've seen a lot of Catfish.
Yeah, so there was this like guy that thought he was in a relationship with Katy Perry, and it was like this girl like years ago on some social media platform made like, I don't know what the username was, but it was like Katy Perry 419, I don't know. And the guy like, and she just kind of like pretended to be Katy Perry, and the guy like thought Katy Perry was in love with him. They found, because it's Catfish, you know, they found out she was fake, blah, 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 blah. And even with meeting her, he was like, this is not real. Like, Katy Perry is in love with me. I might not be telling that episode 100% correctly, but that one sticks out.
We gotta find the episode. What season? What episode?
I'm sure if you later. Search Catfish. Hold on, I'll do it right now. But
that makes me nervous too with like AI now, that someone could very easily, because there's a billion images of us online, like be thinking that they're in a relationship with us.
Yep.
But then, I mean, that's full of fatal attraction.
I think obviously, like, I mean, I'm not clinically saying anything about these individuals, but sometimes there are other things usually going on there. If it's reached to that level where you think that someone who doesn't even know your existence is in love with you, there's some other stuff that we have to discuss that's going on. Putting that in the gentlest of terms.
Season 5, episode 15, aired August 17th, 2016, entitled Spencer and Katie. You all can go look it up.
Ooh, thank you.
Watch that tonight.
Yeah.
Jess is the Googler.
I'm a Googler too. I love Googling things. I hate if I have a thought, I need to Google it immediately and resolve it, or I can't hear anything.
Yeah. We'll be talking about something and we'll see Jess like ferociously typing, and we're like, what are you researching, Jess?
I'm like, I'm just looking up something you said. But I definitely think, and I'm going to be completely transparent since I was looking that up. If you all said this, I apologize. But like to the second part of Caitlin's question about like, has this delusion increased with social media? I absolutely think so. Because like we have more access to people that we didn't before. Like, you know,
also, there's some really intensely like sexual, intimate content on the internet. Like,
oh, absolutely.
I'm probably not too well versed in this because the majority of my, like 90-something% of my following is female. And so I don't thankfully get too many DMs from men, and they get blocked when they do. But I feel like with a lot of thirst trap, OnlyFans, like there's a lot of intimate content on the internet, which can definitely blur the lines for someone who is not maybe aware that such and such girl who's like, you know, a lot of people like play to the camera, and it's not like a skit or educational content. They're like flirting with the camera or with the consumer, and they like curate that sort of intimacy. I bet it's really easy to blur those lines.
Well, and another thing, Meredith, like you were just talking about like flirting and stuff. And I'm just imagining if people feel like maybe isolated or alone or have had like difficult, intimate relationships in the past, and then somebody online, and maybe they do respond to messages or they are like that more flirty. Like if you're already in that vulnerable state, you know, I can see how it can cross into that and believing that this person is in love with you. I mean, there's a Law and Order SVU episode about that. I can't remember what season, but it's like a cam girl, and then she gets like
season 427.
Oh, I have
attacked.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, I thought she was talking to me. Like, this is what she wanted. She's in love with me. I know I'm bringing up so many.
Also, and then that gets into like
pop culture
partner violence too, because a lot of this stuff, a lot of streamers and like there's money being exchanged. And so people feel entitled to more access to you than they are
absolutely
entitled to.
Yeah.
Scary. I'm going to quit the internet now.
So Amy from Connecticut says, is there ever a time when a parasocial relationship could be seen as a positive influence on someone's life? I'm thinking when you're told just to go along with dementia patients' narratives that their long-gone husband is coming to visit today, and wondering if the same logic applies. If a person is very depressed or experiencing something difficult and a parasocial relationship they've created is the only thing that keeps someone going, can it be positive for them even if it's all based in fantasy? I personally think that that's a very, very tightrope to walk.
Yeah.
That can usually just not end up in a great scenario. That's my own personal opinion. Because again, if you can't have the logic on the other end of that, I could go back to Taylor Swift. Like people like Taylor Swift, like her existence gets me out of bed in the morning. Like, it's different than
on someone.
Yeah. It's different than saying, I'm going to get out of bed this morning and I'm going to keep going because I'm going to listen to her music, or I'm going to get out of bed because it's another day closer to seeing her in concert again. Like,
And I think that is sometimes Kristen, I think I've shared this story with you, and I won't share the creator's name, but I was present at an event where followers from a social media personality's followers were meeting them. And I've been in those scenarios a lot. And it's very interesting to hear the way that information or those feelings are expressed face to face to someone, where there'll be like, I was in a really dark place in my life and your videos, and people have said that to me, right? Like your videos are really helpful. But I've also watched people say to a creator, if you ever stop making videos, I'm just going to have to kill myself. Yeah. And it's very like to watch it. It was like one of those, I felt like I was above it watching it being like, what? Like, because they meant it. And I don't think that they were aware of how it was landing. And it also puts that person after was like, what do I do with this information? Like, and I don't know where I'm going with this, but in that moment, as someone who's watched that happen, I felt like, and there's no clinical degree here, so I'm not diagnosing anyone. That to me did not feel like a scenario that should be encouraged. Yeah. I would probably, if I knew someone who was expressing stuff like that to me, I would hope that I would help them get some professional assistance, because in watching it happen, I was like, this doesn't feel safe. For anyone involved.
And I think like with this question, there is a very clear difference between someone, I want to just put this out there, someone who has dementia and someone who does not. I think that like we said, like there's a fine line, but especially if you have like your faculties and things like that, like it's very different than great grandma who doesn't even know what year it is and thinks she's married to. I almost said Jr. Wait, you're going to say Robert Downey Jr.? Travis Barker, but I meant to say
grandma thinks she's married to the drummer from.
I meant to say the jazz singer Tony Bennett.
Very different. Very different.
Very different people.
I also think, though, like, it's a spectrum, because I know the example that Amy gave, like, you know, if it's the only thing keeping someone going, is very different than if someone's depressed and maybe they've like developed a few parasocial relationship with content creators who make funny content and they're like, wow, you know, I'm feeling depressed, but I know like I enjoy watching these videos because they make me laugh and that makes me feel good. Yeah. So I feel like there can be positives in it. I think it's when it kind of goes into kind of the territory we've already been talking about. Like when, you know, you're saying, I'm going to end my life if you stop making videos, or we've already talked about like obsessions and kind of stalker-ish behavior. So like you said, KBI, if you have your faculties and you recognize like, oh yes, like I love watching this creator's content and like I feel like we're friends, but I absolutely know that we're not. It would be cool if we were. Like I feel like that can still be positive. It's when it kind of crosses into that territory. So I feel like it's a spectrum, like with everything we ever talk about on this podcast.
Absolutely. And this next question is why I was thinking about Tony Bennett. So Sam asks, what are your thoughts on when people have huge over-the-top reactions when celebrities die? The other day, my mom was crying over that jazz singer dying, which I assume is Tony Bennett. I mean, I've gotten sad when celebrities die, but I can't imagine crying over it.
Well, we know 20% of people, according to that one study, truly grieve.
Who was the actor that just passed away from Euphoria?
Oh, I don't know, but
I don't watch Euphoria, but yes,
either.
Oh no,
but I know that there's been a couple, like again, Betty White, and I can't think of any other celebrities who died recently.
Angus Cloud,
but Angus Cloud.
I mean, I cried over Robin Williams.
Yep.
But I don't know. I guess it's interesting, Sam, because they said huge over the top reactions and then talked about crying. And I guess this is my like clinical brain. Like, are you perceiving crying as a over the top reaction? Meredith's laughing at me.
No, great.
No, but I mean, I honestly think a lot of it is like, I don't know how, I don't want to say like how much of your life, like Meredith, you brought up Britney Spears. Like, so for all of us, like Britney Spears came into our lives, I'm putting that in quotes, when we were young girls.
Yep,
like, and like we have seen her grow up. We have grown up with her. I mean, Taylor Swift is another like example. Like, I mean, we were older than when Britney Spears came out, but like, I mean, I'm born the same year as Taylor Swift. So like literally all of her milestones, like I was the same age. So I think something like that is different than like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think it just depends on how that person has impacted you. I don't know.
Yeah. And like I don't know how much you consume about a royal family, but even stuff like that, the way that people react to people that they feel like they're entitled to, and not just a death, like when, Harry and Meghan like left the royal family, the way that people reacted, I was like, I remember being like, what is going, like, I could not comprehend the vitriol that people had for them. Cause I was like, it's literally just like people that live in a castle that they were born into. Like, but they were so angry. And I feel like that's the same thing where Kobe Bryant dies or somebody like huge that people have just sort of, they've existed as a part of your reality, even though you don't. And like Robin Williams, I think for a lot of us I'm sorry, there's a cat. One of my cats just keeps putting his paw under the door, trying to open it. So if I look up away in the middle of a sentence, it's because there's just like a
Which
paw.
one is it? Which one?
Edward Scissorhands, my big orange baby. But Robin Williams, for example, we grew up, he was the genie. He was the voice of the genie in our Aladdin movies growing up. So like his existence, like Britney Spears and Taylor Swift or Kobe Bryant, my husband's a huge basketball fan. Like they aren't just somebody on your TikTok screen or somebody in one movie one time. It's someone who has been through a duration of your life. And I feel like you said, crying might not be an over the top reaction to everybody. but grief is really weird for a lot of people. And in the same way people relate to social media influencers, like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but
no, I think you make some really good points.
I think it's just people, when you love them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that also speaks to Parasocial. Like, Robin Williams had no idea who any of us are.
No.
But I mean, actually,
I was besties with him.
Right. Like, I'm literally telling you, I feel weird sometimes when people have parasocial relationships with me. And then I'm like, I got Robin Williams and Britney Spears and Harry and Meghan Markle. Like,
yeah.
I voted yes when they asked on the poll, do you have parasocial?
At least you admit
the poll that you didn't look at.
No, there was two. Were they two sections? Because I answered 4 of them and then I didn't see the last 2 of them.
Oh, okay. Maybe I was delayed in trying to. Finding the screen grab from Janelle's video did take a while, so that post was a little later.
Fine. I'll make you a Teletubby profile picture for all of you. You're good.
Perfect.
Okay, so we got 2 of a similar question, both from New England. So Lex from Mass and M from Maine. I'm going to read M's question, but Lex also asks, it says, I'm wondering what it's like for someone who is the subject of a parasocial relationship or many such relationships. There are people I've been following on TikTok for years who I feel attached to as friends, but who of course I don't know who I am, which when I think about it too much makes me feel like a creep. Does it feel creepy to any of you on the other end? And basically Lex has also said, have any of you experienced that?
Do you want to start? Yes. I've got a great. You guys can
start with your great story, Meredith.
I don't go out that much. Like my videos are made in my car, and my platform is built with very little change to my day-to-day life. Right. So like I just go to my car and then I go inside and I like bring my kids to and from school and I work my job and I just upload videos during all of that. So then I'll go somewhere and someone will have a really strong reaction to me, and my brain sometimes can't comprehend what's happening because I'm like, how do you know who I am? Even though I know that I'm putting a video out there, like, because my linear day is very much the same. And particularly when I'm in Maine, when we go places, I run into people who are 99 times out of 100 fantastic. I met a woman out to dinner yesterday who came up. She was super nice. She was respectful. I was with my kids. It was very normal. But last year, my grandmother passed away, and I had some long COVID stuff, and I had a doctor's appointment, and then I had to go to the mall to find a dress for a funeral. And I was at my doctor's appointment having blood drawn. And I was like, again, under-resourced in a very vulnerable space. And one of the staff members at the doctor's office poked her head around the door and was like, I'm a huge fan, blah, blah. And I'm intimately aware that that's like really, really inappropriate. Uh-huh. And I was like, well, I can't be I wanted to be and I was just like, I had like a needle in my arm getting blood drawn. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, okay, well, I'm uncomfortable. This person has access to my medical records. But I also didn't want to say something because she was really complimentary and very kind from her perception. Mm-hmm. And I felt guilty because I didn't want to be like, you made me feel really uncomfortable. So I never said anything until this. So if you're my doctor's office watching this is totally hypothetical. And then later that same day, I went to the mall with my daughter to look. It's very hard to find a funeral appropriate like black dress for an elementary school kid. So my daughter and I are walking, and a woman ran up to me and like borderline tackled me, hugged me, was like, I love you. And she was like going all over the top and was like grabbing me. And my daughter was with me. And then this woman goes, what's your name? And I was like, you love me. You're telling me you love me. You feel entitled to touch me and like accost me, but you don't know my name. And it was such a weird moment. And my daughter was like, what was that? And I was like, again, there's this sort of expectation that you're going to be the person that they know online. And I was trying so hard to meet that expectation while also being like years and years into boundary work and therapy and wanting to be like, please don't touch me. I'm with my child. I'm shopping for dresses for a funeral. Like, you don't have a right to touch my body or to talk to me in a doctor's setting. But it's so hard and weird to navigate because, again, I'm not J-Lo. I'm not like, used to the paparazzi standing outside, and it's not necessarily an everyday expectation in my life. Or weirder people will send me a message and they'll be like, I saw you grocery shopping at Hannaford, but I didn't want to say hi. And I'm like, please just say hi because this is weirder. This makes me feel unsafe. And I also like, maybe you could just see me at Hannaford. You don't have to tell me that you were watching me, but they feel like it's a normal thing. Like, hey girl, saw you at Hannaford. And I'm like, this is I could tell you a billion stories, but the one at the doctor's office and, the mall were some of the weirder ones that I've had. So most of the time I love it. People are super kind. Is there a time limit on my really long answers? I love it.
No, you're doing great.
Most of the time people are really kind and they'll be like, a girl the other day was like, your voice is really important on the internet. And I was like, thank you. And she was super friendly. Most people are really respectful, especially when I'm with my family. But it's always the one that ruins it that you're like, I'm thinking I should just quit the internet and go into hiding. I'm literally hot from telling that story. And both of your faces from like a clinical standpoint, when I told you the doctor's office one, you were both like,
well, to your point, like access to medical record, like that's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I would have just rather not know. Thanks.
Do you follow Drew Aflolo?
Yes.
So she put up a story like last year and was like, listen, guys, I love you. But if I am in a medical setting, in a financial setting, she went through like a list of things and she was like, please don't say anything. She's like, I know you know who I am, but like, please don't make me uncomfortable in these scenarios where I'm already sort of in a vulnerable position. And that's the only time that I feel weird. Or when I've caught people being like, snap. And I'm like, nope. I would love to take a selfie with you, but please don't take pictures of me you are different. You just blackmail me with photo recordings. But anyway,
I'll post one in the stories when the episode comes out.
Okay.
I would say most of my interactions have been really great. I would say almost 90% of them always start out, I don't mean to be weird. And I automatically know.
Yep.
I'm like, I will say the only negative interaction, and it wasn't really even that negative because the person took the feedback really well, is the most common place I get recognized is the Target in South Portland. I swear to God, at least every time I walk into that store, every other time I get recognized by someone, which is totally fine. If you see me, like Mara said, I'd rather you come up and say hi and be totally cool about it and then be good. But I was there with my son. My son was sitting in the cart and this girl comes walking up to me at the self-checkout and she goes, oh my God, are you Kristen? And I was like, oh yeah. She goes, I follow you on Instagram. I really love you. And I was like, oh cool, thanks. I'll watch it. And then she goes, this must be your son, and starts stroking his back. And I looked at her and I luckily was able to manage. But I said, please don't touch my son. I said, I don't think you meant any harm by it, but please don't. And she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. And I was like, no, just please don't touch him. I said, and I was like, I'm super happy you came up and said hi to me, like all of that. And she was like, I'm really, and then she's like, it genuinely apologized. She goes, I don't know why I did that. She's like, because I know that you don't post your son on social media. Like, it was an innate reaction. I said, because again, like people sometimes, and this is me making a complete assumption, but if we're talking about parasocial, they think that they're closer to you than they actually are. So that idea of I touched your kid's shoulder or put a hand on his back or whatever seems very normal, because if I walked up to a friend that I've known and I know their kid, I probably would pat their kid on their shoulder if I had a relationship with their kid. But if I don't have that, and I don't actually have that, I'm not going to do that. And so that was luckily like the most extent of my negative interactions. because
I admire your ability to not commit a crime because there's very few.
I almost did, but
there are so many interactions that I do stuff and I leave and I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Not even internet related. So like, I empathize with like a knee jerk reaction from a lot of people. And most of the time, if someone like crosses a line social media wise, like parasocially, usually they're like, I'm sorry, that was wrong. And you can recover. It's the ones that don't understand. But when it comes to my kids, there's very little that would stop me from going to jail.
I remember when we were at Taylor Swift and I literally said, you were like, my daughter's here. And I was like, can I meet her? Is it okay if I meet? Like very, very asking. And I was like, but I also like totally fine if not.
Yeah. Like, well, I mean, and you're different because I actually know you, but like,
but still like that level of respect.
Oh yeah. Like there are women from TikTok that I travel with regularly who have not met my kids. And Pinky was the first person from the internet to come to my house. And I am that's a whole nother thing. But I think sometimes it's hard to receive those relationships as an adult with a support system and with a husband and friends and a therapist and medication. And this is another soapbox that I can always get on about children on the internet and parasocial relationships with children. If you ever want to get into that, I think it's fucking weird.
One day
I will yell it from the rooftops that you can tell someone that you love their child that you don't know. I think that is fucking weird. And you guys can't say that because you're therapists, but I can because I'm a cat lady.
Oh, I can.
There is no reason why a stranger on the internet should know your kid's name, should know where your kid goes to school, should be able to, what's the secret question to go with the stranger who mom and dad, like people shouldn't know that stuff about your kids. And I think we're sort of entering a space where adults are having trouble navigating it. You guys are mental health professionals who are navigating it uncomfortably. And then people are just sort of like serving their children to the internet on a platter, which who knows how those parasocial things are going to play out as someone these kids are going to have in their whole life. But anyway,
we talked a lot about that in the 2 episodes ago, where we talked about like even just like, you talk about your 16-year-old getting his first car and you name the car. Well, what is that? That's a security question.
Security question. What was your first car? Yeah.
Or like, Jess, I was going to say, what about you, Jess? Like, what have you ever had?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't have as large of platforms as you all. So like the times I have been recognized in public, it's always been positive. The times I have felt more like creeped out is when people send me like pictures, videos, like things of like intimate things in their life. And it's happened a lot, like on DMs, like they're like, oh, it was my daughter's birthday. Here's a picture. I'm like, why are you sending a stranger? Like, because at the end of the day, like, I could be a giant creep. Like, like you don't really know. I'm waiting for Kristen to say something because, like,
we all know. We all,
but like, or
we all know,
like important events, or like, and Kristen, I know this has happened to you too, where like people will send like GoFundMe's and be like, oh, I know that you would be so passionate about that, and I'm like, what? Like, I that kind of stuff creeps me out, but not for me, because I'm like, okay, like I delete the message. Like, I'm not going to keep pictures of somebody's kids in my DM. But it concerns me that like people are so trusting to send.
So like I made a video last year. I pay a service to have my private information removed from the internet monthly. And because a couple years ago, I had like a situation that happened that really scared me. And I made a video sort of like joking, but poking fun at how much information people share on the internet. And it was like, so-and-so's being like, oh, my husband's traveling for 2 weeks. And then it was like switching to like, hey, I'm home alone for 2 weeks. Or, hey, we got this open door backyard thing going.
I remember this.
Hey, you're showing people that the whole back of your house is wide open. And I put it up in a lighthearted way. And I had people DM me my own blueprint of my house to be like, nothing is safe on the internet. And while I didn't love that, it was a humbling experience, but it was a great reminder that like you could do whatever you think you're going to do to stay safe on the internet, and it's a bad place. But people will send me images of their kids, or they'll be like, what should I do here? Or I'll post a story about mental health, and they'll write a dissertation about an experience their child has, because they see me as like a trusted friend. But I'm like, you're sharing your child's medical information on a page that I'm 2 clicks away from sending it to his peers. Yeah. And you're sharing it on a public space with your name and your face attached because they trust me, which I appreciate that I've cultivated an environment that people feel safe for that. But at the same time, like, there's no HIPAA for me. Like, you're just writing things on my page and anyone can see it. And so I have to, that's the only time I really monitor stuff is on mental health stuff, because I delete stuff for other people's safety, not even for my own, but it's because they trust me. And I like that. But I'm like, you shouldn't trust me this much. You don't know me. I'll be a murderer like Jennifer Garner.
I know we've touched upon this a little bit, but I want to hear what everybody's answer is. What's your parasocial relationship?
We know mine, Brittany. Anyway,
Brittany,
your turn.
Taylor. Jess, what's yours?
So it's interesting because I looked at the questions ahead of time, and this isn't like current, but I thought about this when prepping for this episode. Like years ago, I used to follow a lot of like fitness influencers, and I followed one who had like a chronic illness, and I work in a children's hospital and blah, blah, blah. And I remember the first time I ever worked with a kid that had the same chronic illness, I was like, so my friend has, and I was like, after it came out of my mouth, I was like, what the heck? And like, I had to do like a lot of like processing. Cause like, I'll be honest, like with my patient, be like, I don't have personal experience with this. And like, I do share, like, you know, if I have a friend or family member, just to kind of normalize it. But I have this distinct memory of being like, I have a friend with this same chronic illness. And like, I know, and I was trying to be positive, but I remember it coming out of my mouth and I was like, no, she is not my friend. Woman has no idea who I am.
Like how people will say, like, I read an article, but it's really that they saw a TikTok. Like maybe you were just subconsciously saying friend because you didn't want to say like this person that I follow online, I believe loves me and I'm a friend because I've watched them do squats. Like, it's hard though. I get it. But I'm a parasocial weirdo, so.
No, and so one recent one that comes to mind is Sophia Bush. My sister and I are like, do you all know she was in One Tree Hill? Yep. And Chicago Med. But like, there's this whole thing about her getting divorced recently, and my sister and I are way too invested in it. And then literally I'm like, she doesn't know me. I don't know their relationship. Why am I invested in this divorce?
There you go.
Like
Sophia Bush. That's your parasocial. This one is for it says this one's for the therapist from Beth from Orlando. How do you feel like ethics play a role in parasocial relationships? I see all the time people in comments of therapy content commenting intimate details and talking about how their content saved lives. Do you think that there is any risk to this? And I know, Meredith, you touched upon this a little bit.
I had a visceral reaction. No, because I've seen this done really well and I've seen this done really poorly. And so I think I don't know if ethics necessarily like plays a role if somebody forms a parasocial relationship. I feel like if you're non-ethical, it could definitely
has a higher chance.
Like I have definitely seen mental health professionals talk to followers in comments like they're besties or pet names. KBS laughing because she knows exactly who I'm talking about.
I think too. And it's just I didn't even know that the rules, and I know that this is
and it's just like way too intimate. Yep. But I don't necessarily think being an ethical therapist and, you know, either not responding or doing a blanket, like if you are in crisis in the United States, please dial 988 or please reach out to your local ED. I don't think that would necessarily inhibit. For me personally, I no longer respond to any crisis comments, DMs, anything like that. I have a pinned video of crisis lines. I have information on my Instagram about it. just because I think it does get into murky water because we are not the internet's therapists. And I don't want to risk my license over someone that's my client.
Receive that though from people like it. I remember that's part of the reason why I don't read DMs anymore because people share things and I hold on to it and it's so heavy and I worry so much for them that like I can't imagine the volume that you guys get in your pages and what it's like to have to be on the receiving end of that information.
I will say a lot of us, like I don't answer DMs. If I answer a DM, it's because I have requested the DM be sent or it's a brand, or it's like a brand. I don't answer, like I get all the time, like, you know, intimate details. And I think that that is to protect me in many different ways, but also it helps to keep the boundaries around what our relationship is, because there are a lot of influencers who will answer DMs and engage in conversation frequently with their followers, which for a lot of influencers, that is okay. Yeah. But given like our kind of area of the kind of the influencer sphere, it gets really, really murky because all it takes is me answering a DM that's casual. Now a person has access to my inbox. And if they send me a crisis, they can now see if I've seen that message.
Yeah. Not if you delete
it gets
before you open it.
True.
Because then it's left on red.
Well, there's
Kristen, do you remember, this is like my favorite story about Kristen. Do you remember when you made that video about seeing your client at the grocery store? And for those of you who have not seen this video, it's Kristen.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Kristen pretending to be the client. It's literally Kristen in both clips, right? And people were losing their minds that
I was filming my client.
Filming your client.
And filmed her client in public and shared it. And Kristen, it was like, one, maybe we're lacking some critical thinking skills on the internet, but like people were so insane in that comment section.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's just logic has left the conversation. And I was genuinely worried for you because people were like, this is a violation.
And every once in a while, when I make those videos now, I'll get a comment or two that isn't Meredith just being snarky. But every once in a while, I'll get that. But yeah, that's what makes, I think, our part a little bit hard is we actually have to be even more aware of that because of, there have definitely been followers, you know, that I have become friends with on a different level. But again, there have been clear like boundaries, like, and it's funny because I've become friends I've become friends with a follower, their friend now. And it's so funny because they're like, I just want therapist Kristen. Like this real Kristen, like this is for the fucking birds.
Real Kristen sucks, guys.
She really does, guys. She really fucking does. But
talking about something at lunch and I'll be like, can you not be like, can you like actually tell me? We'll be like, let's go both way in traffic, which we would never say that as a totally hypothetical situation. I would probably edit that out, but, she'll be like,
I've said it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. She'll be like, this is not therapist, Kristen. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Fine.
Like, get your fucking shit together, Meredith.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you so much, Meredith, for joining us in this conversation. I know that this is a conversation that you can talk about for hours. We've talked about it in depth. And I hope that you guys as our group members kind of learn something new from this conversation around parasocial relationships. Always remember to like, review, subscribe to the podcast, share this podcast with a friend, maybe send it in the DMs to your favorite creators that you have a parasocial relationship with. Let's play on that a little bit. But again, make sure, and as always, we leave you with a reflection question each week. And this week, we just want to know, if you could be friends with a celebrity, influencer, fictional character, who would it be? Let us know over on our Instagram, and we will see you next week in group therapy.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.